And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
Not just big, it's yeah.
Let's go.
Welcome, and thanks for watching and listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. I'm Jeff Morey, and I'm your host. My show, of course, is called the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. And while I cover other topics apart from my three core topics, such as conspiracy theories and social and economic trends, those three are still my core topics and subject matter I talk about on this show. And I have to admit, for all my prepper friends that watch and listen and support me, I know it's been quite a while since I did a prepping show. And for that matter, apart from sharing some posts from the great folks over at True Prepper, Ask a Prepper, and some of the great prepper sites and pages on my social media, I've really been slacking on the prepping content as of late. And I realized that, and it's time I fix that. So I'm very excited to get back to prepping this week and not only cover a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, I also have an awesome guest to help me cover this topic. I've done my research into EMPs and the threat and potential consequences that an attack on the grid could cause, but just being real with you here, I'm not an expert on EMPs, and there's a whole lot that I still don't know or understand about EMPs. But my guest this week does. His name is Dan Galloway, and he is an Army veteran and the CEO and founder of Bad Wolf, an amazing company that manufactures surge protectors and other products that help protect and prepare for not only a potential EMP attack, but also random power surges, electrical storms, or any other natural or man-made threats. I'll let Dan tell you about his background and experience, but rest assured this is an episode you don't want to miss, and Dan will help set the record straight on EMPs and what we can do as preppers to prepare. I want to welcome Dan Galloway to the show. Welcome, Dan. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, would you tell everyone about your background and what made you found Bad Wolf?
My background has been ever since a kid in electronics, young kid tearing stuff apart, not knowing what I was doing. That grew into a passion of back years ago, CB radios and two-way radios and so on, which led to saying, okay, now it's time to join the military. What am I going to do? I need to do electronics in the military. As my military service, I did 24 Tango, Patriot missiles. I was the electrician, operator, basically did everything with the Patriot missiles. Was injured during my time in the military, got out, went into electronics again, said, you know what? Time to go get my degree, got my bachelor's degree in electronic engineering, continued on with electronics, working for private companies, designing electronic products and circuits and so on for people. And, kind of grew into that. And then also the desire to help people. So I started volunteering with the local sheriff's office, doing search and rescue with them, kind of that carrying on of the military service of trying to be there and help serve.
Well, God bless you, brother, because I'm going to tell you, I'm a self-made prepper, but I don't do anything electrical. That's not my thing. My wife jokes at me about it. I don't mess with anything electrical because I'm just going to shock and kill myself if I do. So it's awesome you can do that. And first of all, thank you for your service. Appreciate all you've done for our country. But you know what I want to talk to you about, what I want to ask you about. I want to ask you about EMPs because this is such a highly discussed subject within the prepper world. There's a lot of misconceptions about, I know me and you have chatted before we actually did this show quite a bit about it, and you've even enlightened me on some things because there's there's the perception that a possible EMP event is an all-ending thing, and that it's going to shut down the grid and shut our country down, and we're going to be paralyzed. So I can't wait to get your perspective on that and get a little bit more insight. First of all, could you explain to the audience exactly what an EMP is, the different types of EMPs, and what it does?
Yeah, an EMP, the reference of an EMP, of course, it's electromagnetic pulse. That in itself is just a pulse. It's a fragment of electromagnetic field. And electromagnetics is all around us all the time. The Bluetooth headset that you're using is using an EMP pulse, basically. That wireless charger you have for your watch or your phone or for anything, that is doing electromagnetic pulse. So the term, a lot of people hear that and they get scared. Oh my gosh, an EMP, that's doomsday, that's end of the world stuff. It doesn't have to be that. It can be, normal everyday use. It's radars, use an EMP pulse. It's out there in the world all the time. So it doesn't have to be such a fearful thing.
Makes sense. Basically, there's two types of EMPs, right? As we're referring to it, basically more as like I don't want to say a weaponized, but how it could attack or affect the grid. You've got your nuclear EMP and then like a solar or natural type EMP, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then a nuclear EMP is, what we think of as like a foreign power or somebody that would detonate a high impact nuclear blast basically up in the atmosphere, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I guess there's a lot of things you with your background, you got a unique perspective on how they work, and not only the true threat level they possess, but also how likely it is that we could sustain a direct EMP attack on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
Could you set the record straight on how much of a threat we truly are under of an actual EMP attack by a foreign power?
I believe by a foreign power, the old saying of one is going to be detonated, high altitude over the middle of the country and affect the country, east coast to west coast. I believe that's a low chance. There's never certainties, but I believe that's a low chance of that scenario. If we go down that rabbit hole of, okay, that is what is going to happen, I believe that it's more likely that it would be a local event. I like to reference, I don't believe that this was exactly the case, but it would have similar outcomes in the Nashville area a few years ago when the cellular company, I don't know if it was Verizon or AT&T or whatever, but there was some kind of explosion that took out their network from that area. And they say that it was some kind of electromagnetic interference. Locally, of course, it did whatever damage to there, but it cascaded through to everywhere else. Even here in Florida, where I'm located at, we had cellular disruption from it. The EM field didn't directly affect us, but because of what happened in Nashville, yes, it did affect us. And I think more likely of it being small, if you want to say suitcase, type events, that's a more likely thing. And if it was to target some of our infrastructure to where it would affect other areas, that would be a bad thing.
I'm sure there's a lot of things you saw and learned during your time with the Army. There's probably lots classified you can't talk about, but what can you tell us about the steps the U.S. military takes to not only protect against EMPs, but also against military offensive weaponry that could potentially be used on the battlefield?
I believe the military, just like our government, is a little bit slow to react to situations and prepare for them like they should. I still, even today, even though I've been out of the military a while, I still feel that they're behind the eight ball. They have started hardening certain areas, and they really focus on a structure, a building, a communication hub. That's where they focused on, not in general of everything. Their vehicles and the personnel and so on, but they're kind of focusing in that direction first. And I'm glad that they are, improving, but I think they need to take a few more steps and be, prepared rather than reacting.
Proactive instead of reactive, right?
Yeah.
Do you think the military takes an EMP attack seriously? Is this something that, that they're talking about in the Pentagon is a real threat, or do you think that they're like, this is probably low on the bingo card of things that we're going to get hit against?
I think a few people are taking it serious, but I think for the majority, it's somebody has proposed, a scenario. Let's run it through and see, but I don't think it's getting the credit it deserves. Every once in a while you hear it in the news, it comes up, but I think it disappears just as fast.
Right. I'm gonna ask you the same thing about civilian infrastructure. How prepared are our cities, counties, and municipalities to protect against EMPs, solar flares, or even power surges in the grid?
I think that the same thing, they're behind on it, but for them, it's mainly a cost that they're looking at. There's a difference between protecting from, say, a lightning striking the grid or a lightning strike hitting the grid versus, an EM event. I'm sure everybody is well, versed in it, the Carrington event type situation. Right. They're not ready for something like that, they talk about it and look into it, but it's billions to trillions of dollars, to harden the grid to be to that level. And I don't think that they've put the possibility of it happening high enough to justify the cost to do it.
In the event of not only an EMP attack, but other threats such as solar flares, power surges, etc., what electronics in our homes that are part of the power grid are most vulnerable, do you think?
I think first, anything connected to the grid, meaning, your 240 volt split phase coming in, that's going to be the first thing. And an indirect lightning strike, again, referencing us here in Florida, we have a lot of lightning. It's always hitting trees outside of our home. An indirect lightning strike creates an EMP. It creates an EM field. If you've ever been on your phone listening to a radio or something and lightning hits close but didn't actually hit your home or the electric company, you'll hear that crack in the speakers, or you'll hear a pop. That's that EM field affecting whatever it was you were doing. So that is more of a concern along those lines. I personally think that the solar flare, the CME, is a higher chance in the next few years of having an issue than, a political issue, just because that would be a longer event and there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
Maybe we hear, oh my gosh, it's coming. We have a little bit of time to get ready. And then once it's happened, we can't blame anybody. We're just stuck trying to help each other. Here in Florida, again, all the hurricanes that we have, I know exactly what happens when people say something's coming this way. They really freak out, even if it misses us.
Yeah. Yeah. So that leads me to the average lay person, an everyday prepper such as myself. What do we need to do to prepare? What steps and measures should we take to not only protect ourselves from the threat of an EMP attack, but also from these natural events such as electrical storms or non-nefarious events such as power surges?
I think it's good to prepare in all ways, specifically talking about, the EMPs and the electrical storms. Adding that in, I would say my first level of defense would again be anything tied to the grid. That is going to be your weakest point for sure. NEC, the National Electric Code, beyond talking about an EM event, National Electric Code says that every house now should have a whole house surge protector in it. Even if it's a traditional surge protector that isn't fast enough to detect an EM event, it's required. You should have a surge protector. So everybody should have a surge protector of any kind of level connected to their home. That, gets that first line of defense for them.
Right. Let's talk about some of the truths and the myths around some of the electronics and things that would happen if we did actually have an event. I know me and you had chatted before. Let's first talk about your small stuff, like your handheld radios, your cell phones, those kind of things. What's the odds and the possibility that if we did have, just per se an EMP attack, even a localized attack, how likely is it that some of these things are going to be shorted out, that they're going to just die or stop being used, period? What's the likelihood of that actually happening?
Again, it's going to depend on, like you just said, is it a local event or not? The strength of the electromagnetic field that is affecting your devices, be it your cell phone, your TV, through the electric grid, whatever, that strength of that field is what's going to determine what happens. In an EMP, no matter where the source is coming from, you can almost think of it as being like a campfire. If you get real close to that campfire, it's going to burn you. It's really hot. But you step back 20 feet from that campfire, and you may not even be able to feel the heat from the fire anymore. That fire is still putting out the same amount of energy. That's the way an EM field works. The further you get away from it, the less powerful it is, basically. And electrical wires act like antennas. Think of a two-way radio. If you have a quarter wave, little short antenna on your radio, it doesn't pick up that signal as good as a longer half wave or 5/8 wave antenna. It has more gain to it. That's how the electrical wires work in your home. So whatever has more wiring connected to it, it's going to be a better antenna. It's going to absorb that energy better. An EMP, it has those three phases to it, that E1, E2, E3. That is also, E1 references kind of the higher frequency, the first part of the surge. That high frequency is more likely to affect smaller things. It's going to be some of the shorter wires, the more sensitive components. As you move through the E2 and E3, then the wavelength becomes longer, and then it affects more of the power grid and so on. But even the reference of that E1, E2, 3, you could think of it in radio waves. E1 is the very high frequency or the ultra high frequency, up in the megahertz to gigahertz. The E2 is more in the hertz to, or kilohertz to megahertz range, and the E3 is that's the low frequency. That's low frequency to HF, and that's how it behaves. So think of any electronics that can affect high frequency, low frequency, and so on. A cell phone, that antenna built in it is made for that very high frequency, so it's going to pick up that signal better than it's going to pick up a 60 hertz signal.
Well, let me ask you, I guess the best thing I can do is ask you, and I know it's kind of a unspoken prepper code that you don't share all your own preps with everybody, but like what's in Dan's house? What do you have prepared as far as your home? Because there's always like the perception that if there's an EMP attack, or even say a solar flare, and there's a big surge, that you might lose your appliances, such as your microwave, your refrigerator. Kind of go through that for us. What do you have in your home? What's the likelihood of some of these things getting knocked out? You hear some of these crazy prepper stories about guys going and building these massive Faraday cages and wrapping their refrigerator in it and wrapping their microwave in it and all these things. So can you break that down for us a little bit more, and maybe just either put to rest some of those myths, or just talk about how the possibility, I guess, of that any of those things could get blown out?
Yeah, and for myself, my gut is it's more likely the solar events. So I'm planning more towards that than the local or the foreign issues, but it is still a concern. So I'm looking more towards, I have everything very hardened from the grid, my backup generators, everything's made for to be protected against that, a long-term event, not that the time that it's going to take for the whole situation to play out of, okay, everybody reacting to it, but the actual energy, a longer term energy field. Think of the northern lights that we've been having from the CMEs. Those don't just show up for 15 minutes and they're gone. They last for hours, days. They last for a long time, and that's what I'm more prepared for is that longer term energy, a Carrington event, kind of situation. I don't have any Faraday cages. I don't have any Faraday bags.
Really?
The reason for that is I believe that in order for my cell phone to get damaged, that energy field referencing, that campfire, that energy field is going to have to be so powerful or so close to me to damage that cell phone that more likely I'm going to have other issues. For example, with the Patriot missiles, it has dual polarized radar systems on them. And working with those, and I actually still have my FCC license for ground radar, ship radar, and so on. Having that experience with radar, radar is putting out an EM pulse. That's how it works. But ask anybody that knows about radar systems, you don't want to stand in front of one when it's powered on because it's like a microwave. A microwave is an EM generator. You'll cook yourself in front of that radar. So a Faraday cage or bag that is made out of aluminum isn't going to help protect against all that. Aluminum is very good at a certain narrow frequency, which works really good for the near field protection for your credit cards and so on. It works really good at blocking some Wi-Fi signals and cellular because it's in that frequency band. But a burst of energy from the sun or from some kind of explosion is going to be a wide band burst of energy. And 99% of the Faraday cages out there are not built for that wide band burst. They're built for when you stick a two-way radio in it, test it, and it doesn't work, you think it works. So to build a real true Faraday cage to protect against that wide band, it's not just going to be made out of aluminum. It's going to be made out of steel, chicken wire. It could have lead. It's earth. There's a lot of other materials that block those lower frequencies. And if you really want a true, Faraday type setup, that's what you need. So my concern is I'm not worried about anybody in my home, stealing my credit card information or getting some off on my phone. That I can handle, at a different time. So for me, that's what I'm prepared for. Is that, and to be able to be mobile, to be able to, decide where I want to go.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they've created a whole industry around this. I mean, and you can tell that you're an honest guy and your company is honest because you sell these products for a living. And I assume if you thought there was really a market for all this stuff, you'd be making Faraday bags and Faraday cages. So, and I think that's, as I'm talking to people through this show and my networking, I learned things about this because if you'd have asked me even 6-8 months ago, I did a show with another prepper friend of mine who also has a prepping podcast. And he asked me the question, what's the biggest thing, I guess, SHTF scenario that you lose sleep over at night? And I told him an EMP attack because I just, we don't know any better. That's what we're kind of, I guess, brainwashed and trained to think from the prepper industry. And as you get into it, because you see all these products and you hear all this doom and gloom about everything. So it's good to talk to somebody that, has real world experience with this stuff and has a little bit more inside knowledge, because it's definitely always, to me, been one of the number one threats. And I would have ranked it right up there with AI and, political unrest and collapse of the financial system as my most likely scenarios, the things that I think could possibly happen in the next, few years, decade, even, 50 years from now. So that's great information to hear. It's probably maybe not necessarily as doom and gloom as everybody thinks it is.
That's definitely my view on it, that, it's a possibility, but a lot of the times, the effects are exaggerated, a bit too, everybody likes to have a little bit of fear, and put into it.
Right.
And, nothing you can do is ever going to give you 100% certainty that,
well, that's with anything, no matter what you're preparing for.
Yes. Yeah. And, being ready for some of the other things that would happen, no matter if it is an EMP attack, no matter if it's solar flare, no matter if it's a hurricane like here in Florida, having all your supplies and everything, that's a given. Even if you you survive through the EM event, all your electronics are fine, everything's good. Well, now you're relying on the grid, you're relying on everything exterior to you also, to help you survive. And, if you aren't ready for that, what good was the EM protection for you?
Exactly. Well, let's talk about Bad Wolf and talk about what you do specifically in some of your products. Could you talk about some of your whole home surge protectors and some of the products that you have and what they have to offer and how they can help?
Yeah. We manufacture on the surge protector line, we basically go two different directions. We have what we call our standard surge protectors, what would qualify for what I was referencing earlier with the National Electric Code, the ones that are required for your home. NEC kind of sets a standard of around 50,000 amps of surge rating is what they recommend for a home. That's where we start at. And we sell devices that are the typical, it meets what's needed for lightning protection, for the brownouts, for storm issues, all the traditional stuff. And then we have our EM line, which of course includes the EMPs, the indirect lightning strikes, the CMEs, solar flares. That's a different line. Those are built a little bit different than the standard surge protectors. There's only a few companies in the world that are making surge protectors that are capable of reacting to, as I was referencing, the three different phases in EM, the E1 range. That is a very fast transient surge. That surge, even though we think a lightning strike is very fast, that EM surge, can happen hundreds or thousands of times faster than that lightning strike. May not be as powerful. Lightning strikes can be the most powerful surge you can ever possibly have, but an EM surge can be faster. So we have our other line of surge protectors that are built using some of the newer type of components like TVS diodes, GDTs, gas discharge tubes. Those allow the surge protector to react to surges faster. So we go those two different directions. We have surge protectors anywhere from, like I referenced, the 50,000 amps, that's kind of the minimum range, all the way up to some that are 500,000 amps for consumer application. And we also do OEM manufacturing for other companies, and we have surge protectors that we manufacture that are over 1 million amps for those, for like 3-phase applications.
Let's talk the future of EMPs and technology in general. What future tech do you see emerging that could both protect and attack our country or our personal property?
I think as other countries work on, the scenarios of using an EMP weapon, I think it's going to be fine-tuned some. Going back to my concern of the local event, I do believe that, as they improve their technology for that, that delivery may be, more practical, to actually do. Right now, the steps that would be involved in doing it, it would be hard for somebody to come over here and do a local event, as bad as it sounds. For protection, as I referenced, for surge protectors, the TVS diodes and the GDTs, TVS diodes are the fastest surge suppression component that's manufactured. Theoretically, they have no delay. They react instantaneously. We do quote them as having a little bit of delay because of the wiring kind of slows down the surge as it goes through it. But you really can't build components faster than instantaneous. So for surge protectors, that's probably going to be the limit. Maybe they'll get a little bit more powerful because of the TVS diode technology, but surge protectors, it's just about hit a wall there. You can't get much faster than that. Other electronics you get into, TVs, your iPhones, and so on, all those have surge protection built into them. Anything that runs off electricity or battery has surge protection built into it. It's built for the surge of plugging a cord into it or disconnecting it while the power's on, that little bit of surge.
Yeah, normal everyday stuff.
Yeah, so maybe some of the companies can start looking into that, like, okay, maybe we can pick up some of this technology that's used in surge protectors and incorporate it into our products to make them more hardened, would be a good thing.
Yeah, I'm surprised Apple hadn't picked up on that. I've been waiting for Apple or somebody to have the Prepper iPhone or something along those lines. It's such a big industry now. So what are you guys cooking up? Is there anything y'all are working on your product line? Any innovations or anything new that's in the works? Or
we're always working and innovating new things. We manufacture more than just surge protectors. We are a contract manufacturer, and we're always having new customers come to us and say, hey, I've got this project I'm working on, can you do something like this for us? And, we're working on those projects. Sometimes we kind of go hybrid and, we take what we've learned from one design and application and apply it to another one. Do have, hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, some and I use the word hybrid, some hybrid devices coming out that really should fill in some gaps out there for other products in the prepping world that kind of fit the bill, for protecting everything that needs to be done now, plus again the worst case scenario.
Very good. All right, so I'm gonna summarize this a little bit. So you've put my mind at ease a little bit. So I don't think we have to worry about Kim Jong Un or President Xi coming and nuking our atmosphere and shutting down our power grid too much. Am I hearing that right through your perspective?
Likelihood is low, and even if so, as I said earlier, that if we have a solar flare, there's nothing we can do about that. We are in trouble for a long time.
Yeah, so you're thinking a Carrington event type of thing is the more likely thing that we need to be preparing for.
That is of EM events. That is my main concern, and I can't remember exactly the name of it right now offhand. But there was another event that maybe you're even aware of this. That it is a little bit more seldom of an event. I think it's something that happens every 150 to 200,000 years, but it was another, not a solar EM event, but a solar system EM event that comes through, and it's 1,000 times more powerful than the Carrington event. It's been recorded in the soil sample, in the trees, and so on, that the EM field was so powerful that it affected the growth of the trees. So again, referencing, a lot of people say that, an EM field won't hurt you. Well, if it affects the growth of the trees, it's likely going to hurt you as well. Now,
whether directly or indirectly, it's hurting you one way or another.
Yes, yeah. So I hope that one's a long way off, but I think a Carrington event or one of those events, that's at least for half of the globe, it may knock out, for best case scenario, weeks or months, best case scenario.
Very good, Dan. What do you like to do for fun when you're not spending time working on all this stuff and doing EMPs? Or are you a prepper yourself? Are you out building your garden and hatching chicken eggs and building the geodesic dome? Or what do you like to do in your spare time?
As I said in the beginning, I can't seem to get away from the electronics and the technical. So that is my specialty. So anything, technical gadgets, equipment, that's my thing. My wife, she's got the green thumb and, she's good with the animals and so on. So I let her take care of that stuff. But I'm always, working, figuring out what I'm going to do. I'm sure, more than half of the people, listening or watching this, are in the same boat. But, as for the prepping, I feel that it's good to have options. I have my home pretty well secure. I have vehicles ready, to hit the road if need be. I have, another location, that's remote and nice, but I don't feel that I have to go to that. I would only go to that if the situation calls for it.
I think the first best thing is always shelter in place if you can, in a real true event. Well, very good, Dan. How can we contact Bad Wolf, and what's the best way to reach you?
You can go to our website, which is badwolfusa.com. Always, can give us a call, send an email. You can find us online. A lot of electricians install our equipment. You can ask your local electrician and say, hey, do you have Bad Wolf products? We're out there. We're worldwide. We have distributors in other countries as well. So you can find us somewhere.
Be sure to check out Dan, military veteran owned, made in the USA. Doesn't get no better than that. Dan, thank you for your service, brother. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode. And stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.